Hi, I'm Randy Reed, editor of the Edison Report, and I am joined today by Margaret Wong, the CEO of McQuang International. Margaret, welcome.
Thank you, Randy.
I just saw a report today in August. Exports from China surged 11% year over year. That really surprised me. Have you heard of this statistic? It was just published this morning, I believe.
Well, I haven't read that statistics, but just using ourselves to be, one of the many millions of people who do business in China that, as I said that, the input duty, is the tariff is definitely is a bomb to us. But is it really hurting us in a big scale? Not really. Not really, because this is a macro situation, means that not just us, everybody have to do that. And I always say that, a lot of people were skeptical about sourcing from China, which I think in the long run, it will hurt the business, but in a short run, in a couple of years, is not easy to kind of, change over to your new suppliers or your new vendors without a, period of time. It will affect the China import to here if the tariff is still in place. If you're going to be somebody going to buy from Vietnam, somebody going to buy from India, from Mexico, from wherever doesn't have those tariffs, I mean, it's obviously it's going to be a better deal. But when you say buy from China, it's not just a tariff; it's the sophistication of the China product, there's the scope of the product they could be able to do it, the innovation of the product that they're putting on, and the logistics of what China, from components procurement to shipping logistics, is not any country can supersede that without a time period. So it takes some time to make that happen. So it will happen in the long run, but in the short run, business has to go on.
Well, that's what we hear, that Vietnam doesn't have the supply channels for the components, and India really struggles with infrastructure. That built in India, and then they just can't get it to the port. Now, Margaret, you've been at this, I think, 30 years. Is it fair to say this is the lowest point in U.S.-China relations?
I would say yes. I think that this is in terms of economics and political, backdrop, it is the lowest point. If not one of the lowest point, is the lowest point that between the U.S.-China relationship that impact the business and the trade.
And from what I understand, the Trump administration is no longer negotiating. Any trade negotiations are on hold and have been paused. Is that your understanding?
Well, it is my understanding that China is putting that on hold, because I
Okay.
think they're kind of going to the wall right now with the administration that we currently have. So they kind of sit back and wait until after the election to see whether or not there's some hope that this thing is going to change. So I think that as much as US is putting on hold, I think China is also putting on hold.
And at the Edison Report, we try not to be political, but it's hard to have this conversation if you don't talk about politics, because politics is kind of at the base of this. If the Trump administration does prevail in November, do you see things changing with relations with China, or do you see them continuing down the path they're on now?
Well, I don't know whether or not both, Trump administration or the, Biden administration that really using, China as being the thieves, as being taking away job, as a political tool to win their seat. Okay, if Trump going to be able to get on, continues with the being the president, I see that somehow, somewhat, that two situation, either this become a tougher, even more tough, from the Trump administration, or either China or Trump will come to a negotiation table thinking something will gonna happen. Okay, so I think that's possible. That possible is because, you know, election is over. Let's get on the table and be able to face it and make a deal. Now, by then, you know, China will have maybe not too much choice, that because Trump administration is tough on China and they have to, you know, make a deal. And Trump at that point may be willing to accept the deal. So, you know, I think that going back to your question is, in my mind, I mean, all along, I think the Trump administration of trying to be able to bring up this issue about enough is enough, and we don't want you to, you know, get all this unbalanced trade. You know, there's too much import, not, you know, enough export. I think that is important to the country, to United States. I mean, somehow, somewhat, this has to be addressed for the balance of trade. Somehow, somewhat, you know, these you know, IP issues or stealing, whatever they were talking about, you know, getting too strong in the market and getting taking away some of the intelligence and so on. You know, there's some truth to it, but not to the extent, in my mind, not to the extent that they are aggravating right now. You know, there are some to the extent, but not to the extent that they become the only thing that need to be addressed. Um, some, you know, like the market in China, the opportunity of US company to be able to sell in China, the opportunity for China to invest into United States. I mean, there's a lot of good opportunities that could impact United States, could be in a good way. So somehow you cannot make these issues into 99% and forgot about there is another 40% good for the United States.
So there are a lot of interdependence where we could help each other if we could figure this out. I read this week the Trump administration has banned the import of certain apparel and computer parts from China, saying they are made by forced labor in the Xinjiang region. Do you know of any issues with forced labor with the lighting industry?
Well, I think this issue of forced labor is becoming a very, as I said, it's always there. Okay, that U.S. is talking about forced labor. In my, you know, part of knowing the China world, I don't see any forced labor. Not to talk about this lighting industry. As the opposite, that, you know, we're having a lot of problems in getting, you know, the labor with the cost has been rising. You know, we have to pay good to get labor. You know, there's no such thing that we need to, you know, get forced labor to be able to do the work. So no, to answer your question, is I did not experience in the past or today, for especially for lighting industries.
Okay, that's great to hear.
Right.
That's great to hear. Um, when I look at the relations, I see a lot going against China with what they're doing in the South China Sea as far as building the islands and their military, the loss of freedom of the press and the right to assemble in Hong Kong, the whole Uyghurs issue and whether or not they're in forced concentration camps. And then, of course, the source of the COVID-19 in Wuhan. Do you see the American public turning against products made in China for those reasons?
Well, I'm sure that the negativeness and the demonization of the administration about China will somehow affect the thinking of a lot of the companies, thinking, say, hey, you know, China, you're bad. I don't want to buy from you. That I think that there are some that are being affected, you know, not much, but somehow if people who know China, who understand China, who understand the politics, I don't think that that will affect the continuation of doing business with China. Now, again, I'm not saying that you know what Trump intentions are totally wrong. I'm not saying that China is not doing some you know, bad stuff, you know, like IP infringement and all these other things. I'm not saying that, but I just said that every country had the same, almost everybody have some bad genes in them. I don't care you are China or you're Vietnam or you are whoever it is, you know, but I think if you want to blow up the bad genes and forget about it, you're still very healthy, there's nothing I can talk about, you know? So I know a lot of things that you talk about, forced labor, you talk about South China, you know, you talk about Hong Kong, you talk about a lot of issues. I mean, you can blow up a lot of issues and kind of like blind you from knowing there's a lot of good things out there. I am more about saying, let's address the issue, bring up the issue. You know, you can bully the issue, but don't turn off the opportunities that we may have that is costing the overall economy. I mean, just like you have a child, if the child doesn't want to brush his teeth, you know, which is very important, you're going to brush his teeth. But if you don't brush your teeth, I'm going to stop having you eating. I'm going to stop having you watching TV. I would stop beating you up and I will lock you up in the room. No,
Right.
just help them.
Do you see any U.S. companies that have manufacturing in Mexico trying to capitalize on the fact that their products are not made in China and gaining market share because of that? Do you see that happening?
I see it happen and that's not happening. I think that Mexico has a lot of benefit because of the proximity and because of their new, you know, the maquilador, you know, benefit and the labor force and all that. But I see that China has a lot more benefits than, you know, Mexico, if I have to view it from my product perspective, okay, that we should not shut the door open. You know, we should continue to develop Mexico. I'm sure that it's still good. But I don't see a lot of migration. I personally, I have not seen a lot of migration yet, okay, because I see migration to Vietnam, to, you know, India, that I see, but Mexico somehow I haven't seen a lot.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's a combination of um, the labor skill,
Okay.
um, innovation aspect, the aggressiveness of getting orders fulfilled,
Do the
the
cartels
creativity.
and the drug wars have any impact on that, do you think?
So the safety issues in Mexico, the labor force of China is not just a labor force anymore. I think the labor force in China have evolved into combination of good engineering, proactive, service-oriented, and also the procurement of the parts. There's so much of the Asia side from Taiwan, from different areas that make it so facilitated. And then in Mexico, you know, the cartel, of course, you know, that, you know, some of the times that you go to Monterrey and you're afraid to even stay in a hotel. So, I gained, you know, I might not know enough, but I think that I still see China to be not just labor force. It's a value added position in there that for a lot of countries hard to compete.
Um, 10 years ago, with China, I think people would question the quality and they would use that against China. Now, I rarely hear that. And I think the quality coming out of China is as good as anywhere in the world. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I think that the quality issue is only because, you know, your own factory or your own management fouled up. I mean, we have that issues too. But overall, I think that if you get a good, you know, management and team and your process being definite, you know, defined clearly, China labor force quality issues is not really an issue.
Right.
The issues is more about the cost of the labor, the turnover of the labor, because now they have so much opportunities. You know, before they can bow to you, they can work with you, anything you ask them to do. That now they have so many choices, and they have the labor law. China labor law is more very stringent, and, you know, compared with the United States, is very stringent. I mean, in terms of, environmental issues and the labor law issues and the cost of the labor, because there's so much opportunities out there, that is causing us a problem more of the quality issues.
It's a good point. Now, Margaret, 10 years ago, we used to hear a lot about the Chinese government and the various provinces subsidizing LED companies because they wanted to have this worldwide position. We don't hear that as much now. And I've also heard the Chinese really don't care about LED. They're much more into AI and higher tech industries than lighting. Have you heard this?
Yeah, I've never seen, Chinese government doing any subsidizing for us, it's just because of LED. At the time when LED was introduced, there was some R&D money and there's some, support, but never in a big wave because there's so many people, dive into this space. It becomes so crowded anyway for
Right.
China market and for offshore market. And right now, yes, AI is big time. AI or anything would get into the components of the chip business, that kind of thing that, that China is putting a lot of focus on, but not on just LED itself. And so it's LED right now is just very, very crowded in terms of manufacturing in China.
And overcapacity, significant overcapacity.
Absolutely.
If you had to put on your forecasting hat, what do you see in 5 years regarding lighting in China?
I always said that China can manufacture or produce, almost everything that we wanted in terms of lighting. In China, they can do it. In here, we have a lot of energy, law, like the Title 24 in California, that you can't do this, you can't do that, you can meet that. But I don't see that as very, very much implemented in China in terms of our California Title 24 law in there. So they can make the product, but they do not use a lot of the intelligent product that we have in here as much as we do in here, not because they don't want to do it, it's just because of the government implication. And energy law is not that stringent as what we have in the United States. Okay, so but I see that's happening in China, and I see that China is focusing so much on AI that the lighting industry in China is going to robust more on the smartness, more of the energy efficiency. They're just beginning. And this is why I said that there is a humongous market that we have for US brain to introduce to China. You can have it made in China, sell in China. What's wrong? It's just like Apple. It's the same thing. They give you an Apple. Apple machine is made in China, but it's sold in China like hotcakes. It's all about your mindset that they need your branded product, the reliable product, your technology that you can integrate that the Chinese cannot integrate as much as you do. You can tell the story about energy. You can tell the story about the application, the smartness, huge market. So I'm still believing made in China and sell in China it could be, but there's so much software. I'm not talking about just the hardware. There's a lot of these, what we call soft intelligence that we have that can make a product from $1 to $10 that you can sell to China.